everybody. Welcome back to the Young Bulls podcast. This is your host, Jackson St. Amant, 23-year-old financial coach out here in California. Super excited today to have my guest on, Alexis Howard. She is a 25-year-old financial coach on Instagram who helps young beginners build wealth through mostly investing. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, no, definitely. So tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself. Give us some background on who you are, your story sort of leading up to where you are today.
Yeah, so my name is Alexis Howard. Like you said, 25-year-old financial coach. And essentially I teach people exactly how they can build wealth for themselves through investing in the stock market and like really honing in on discipline. My main focus actually as a financial coach is giving people the tools to execute on their financial goals. Not just education, but then also again, like developing the emotional behaviors that they need to have in order to ensure that they are staying on track to their goals. I grew up, I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I grew up there, moved to San Francisco at the age of 17 to go to school. And after graduating, I didn't come from a lot of money, and my parents, for those who don't know, San Francisco is extremely expensive.
Right.
And my parents were not able to, help me pay for rent or anything like that. So I had to learn very quickly how I was going to be able to adapt in such an expensive city. And so that's when it really became my mission to like learn all that I could about finance, learn all I could about like saving money and investing money, because I didn't want to live a life of feeling like I was, constrained, like a feeling that I wouldn't be able to have financial freedom.
Right.
And so, I had some experience working in real estate, and then I also worked in like investment firms. And, I just came to really kind of have this appreciation for the way people manage money and grow wealth. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, jump-started my career into, becoming a self-made entrepreneur, teaching people exactly how they can do it too.
Awesome. That's beautiful. I love your story, and it lines up so similarly to mine. I'm curious, at what point in your journey was there a specific moment where you realized, okay, like the traditional path is not for me. I am meant to be an entrepreneur. This is me. This is my direction.
From a really young age, before I was even into finance, I've always been really ambitious. And so for most of my childhood, I wanted to be like a heart surgeon, because I just felt like that was such a prestigious career. And I mean, it is,
right.
But like I, had always wanted to do something big with myself. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that it was closer to graduating college and I started to get into finance specifically. Mm-hmm. But the drive to kind of want to be different and to have a different path for myself, that started at such a young age. I mean, like when I was like 6 or 7, I knew that I wanted to be something different.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you ever have like those little, I know like lots of entrepreneurs have those stories of like the lemonade stand, the garage sales, stuff like that. Was that ever you?
So I actually never did anything in my younger, like my childhood. I didn't do anything that was like a physical, like I never tried to sell anything, but I always had ideas. So I would, when I was like in 2nd grade, I would open up Microsoft Word, and then I would type up, I was obsessed with Lizzie McGuire on Disney Channel. And so I would write like Lizzie McGuire, like series or novels on Microsoft, like pages and pages of just like me writing like a book, because I thought I would become an author. And then when I got a little bit older, I remember always talking to my dad about doing something for the homeless. Like I really envisioned like buying this really tall high rise and being able to get people off the street and have them like live and have like this rehabilitation center in like downtown LA, so I've always been I've always been stirring up ideas and stuff like that, but I never like made money off of it as a child.
Cool. I think it takes a certain like skill set and like experience level too to be able to turn that really into something too, so I don't blame you. You know what I mean? It's just I talk to a lot of people and they're like, looking back, like, yeah, I was like 6, 7 doing lemonade stands, like that's how I knew of it. But like everybody's story is different, so it's really cool to kind of hear how you grew up with a lot of it in your head, and it wasn't until later that started to come out. and
Right.
into fruition. So what was it specifically? I know you like working in the finance industry, and you like sort of the money aspect of it and the numbers side of things, which I do too. But what specifically inspired you to start helping people, and specifically like younger beginners with their money?
I was in a really vulnerable place in my first job post college. I was working at a real estate firm, and I had like the craziest boss. He was such a jerk,
Ugh.
and I was so unhappy. Like I was miserable. But the thing is I couldn't leave because one, I was living in such an expensive city, and I didn't really have a savings account that was prepped for me to quit. And
Right.
so I was in this situation where I was unhappy. I would come to work like anxious. I'd sometimes be shaking. My hands would be sweating because I just knew that it would be a day of like having to deal with someone just like screaming at everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really in that vulnerable space where I was like, whoa, first off, I know I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of people who are working in spaces where they're not happy and they feel like they have to be there because they don't have another alternative. They don't have money to leave and
Yeah.
find another job. Like they're vulnerable just like I'm vulnerable, you know?
Yeah.
And I think coming from a place like that and knowing that I wasn't alone and that there were so many people that could relate to me, I was like, once I was able to work the kinks out and, kind of find myself and get my feet on the ground and kind of, move on, I was like, I have to be able to teach people how they can do that for themselves as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really the root of the issue that you were touching on, is that most people don't realize that there's another option of
Right.
building wealth. Like society really, and like our parents, everything sort of funnels and teaches us how to make money, right? Like get a good job. But if you ask me, there are really three components when it comes down to like being successful with money. You have to know
Yeah.
how to save it, and you should
Yes.
know how to grow it too. And so
Yes.
it's awesome having people like you and I who really focus on two and three, because
Mhm.
the way I see it, there's a huge gap, especially in our generation, just with
Mhm.
the education, and it builds fear, it builds resentment, and it also puts people into that trap that you're talking about, and it's sad to see. So that's awesome, that you're sort of purpose driven and trying to impact others, and you knew also for you that there was a different way. I'm curious with what's going on right now. Obviously, the climate has changed financially, and climate has changed with just about everything. But and specifically on the finance piece, what sort of advice would you offer somebody who wasn't necessarily, say, prepared for a situation like this?
It's from my most vulnerable moments that I've been able to get to where I'm at today. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
if you find yourself, like a lot of people are finding themselves right now in very vulnerable situations, they don't have a savings account, they're not prepared to, lose a job and not have a source of income and still be able to provide food on the table.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, but it doesn't have to be, it really doesn't have to be. You can look at this as a reality check and say, like, now it's time for me to invest in my learning. It's time for me to invest in looking for, like, spending time looking for work, and maybe like starting a side hustle, whatever it is that speaks or resonates with you.
Yeah.
You have to learn from it. I'm not where I'm at today because I was making great decisions. I'm where I'm at today because I wasn't making great decisions. And so
Right.
you have to come from a place, and I know that's easier said than done, but it's possible. Just, you have to look at where you're at right now and say, what is the next best logical step for me, and how can I make sure that if this were to happen, God forbid, if this were to happen again, how can I make sure that I'm not in this situation? And you have to move from there.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's a lot of what we teach as a coach too, is like our reality really comes down to our perspective and the way we see it and our mindset. And I love how you talk about see this as an opportunity of for growth and for progress towards something. This is really it may be a big slap in the face for a lot of people, and I mean my heart goes out, like, at tons of empathy, but at the same time, this, like you said, your most vulnerable moments are where you learn the most. We're learning what not to do,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of us, I think. And so it's really interesting. Is there any other advice that you would give someone right now, like something that they can do to sort of ease the pain if they're still sort of in that scramble mode financially?
Yeah. So a lot of people like it's a kind of like there's a spectrum, right? There's some people who are affected by it, but they're still getting paid as if and working from home. And then there's people who are like completely out of luck and they're just relying on like unemployment or whatever to get by, right? And
Right.
so for the people who are kind of in a more vulnerable position where they are relying on assistance just to be able to get them by until their work situation's figured out, I
Mm.
would say there's no easy answer, right? You can't like grant someone $10,000. Like it's just you have to be able to put in the work. And so if you have time because you're not working, hop on YouTube, read some
Yeah.
books. The amazing thing about starting a business in 2020 is that it's really simple. It's
Yeah.
really simple. You know, you can learn how to start a business in a day if you hop on YouTube and spend a couple of hours like researching that, you know. And so I would encourage I would encourage those who are in vulnerable situations to do whatever they need to do in order to create that side hustle. I mean, first off, you can get part-time jobs at like grocery stores or Amazon. I know there are a lot of like hiring opportunities in those spaces, but more than that, if you want to like actually start kind of growing into the space of entrepreneurship and like have a side hustle, now
Mm-hmm.
is the perfect time to do it.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think now is, like you said, an opportunity for us to really hone in on something and get better and find opportunity. I'm curious for anyone who's interested in building a brand, building a name for themselves, because a lot of people have to start from nothing, right? Well, just
Right.
everyone starts from nothing at some
Right.
point. Um, what sort of advice, because I know you personally have seen some success, at least on Instagram, what advice would you offer somebody who's going down that path and want to build a similar following?
Yeah. So my brand has only been around for like a year, like literally just 1 year. And I'm so shocked and blown away by the sort of feedback that I've gotten.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part of having a successful brand on Instagram is really talking about something that you are truly passionate about. I know it's so cliche. I know people say it all the time. You have to be passionate about it. It
Yeah.
has to resonate with you some way or another because one, I spend hours like trying to put content together, and it's because I enjoy what I do and I enjoy helping people in that space that I'm able to put in the time to make that happen. If
Right.
I had to put hours of content together for creating or like building a car, it would never happen, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm so not interested in that.
You hate
And
it.
so you have to be, you definitely want to step into a space where you are like, this speaks with me,
Right.
because you're going to have to spend a lot of time tailoring your product, tailoring your service in order to kind of see big results. So that
Yeah.
would be like the very first thing I would say to someone. And a great way to identify that passion or identify something that resonates with you and you think you would be good at is starting from a place of what you think is wrong with the world, what makes you unhappy about the world, what you could rant about with your friends for a long
Yeah.
period of time. Because when you're coming from that, it's going to kind of like it's gonna mess with your emotions. It's gonna make you feel a bit more passionate, and you can spend more time like reading about that subject and becoming an expert about that subject.
Right.
And so for me, like in real kind of connecting it to my own brand, one coming from a place of not having a lot of money and seeing my parents struggle with money, that speaks with me, right? I
Yeah.
that messes with my heartstrings a little bit, and so it's easy for me to talk to other people about that and want better for them because I've been in that situation myself, you know?
Yeah.
Also, when it comes to racial inequality as it relates to wealth, like teaching people who may not have access to this information, that also speaks to me being a Black woman and having to learn finance from just like white men typically, you know? So all of that is something that deeply resonates with me. And I think that's why I've been able to put so much into the brand and be able to like see the sort of results that I've seen in just a year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I completely agree because it's all really comes down, I think, to like that fire in your belly that you have, that passion that you talk about. Find something that really gets you out of bed, and something that, like you said, I never really thought about it that way, but something that you could rant to your friends about, or
Yeah.
that something that whenever the thought crosses your mind, it gets you kind of worked up. Right. And,
Right.
and now, like, sort of thinking back, like I have some of those and they definitely align with right now with what I'm doing, with the finance coaching. So that's super interesting. And I think finding that passion first before you jump in is super key, because like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. You have to be like, everything great is through consistent effort, right? And like with investing, right, you don't see returns in the first year, 2 years, and depending on what you're looking for, it might be 30, 40 years, right?
Right.
So super important that it's something that you enjoy doing. You got to love the process, for sure, for sure. And then I'm curious too, like, separate of what's going on now, just for somebody who, say they're making like decent money, they're around our age, but they have no clue how to manage it, how to keep a budget, or maybe they have like a really bad spending habit, something like that. What sort of advice would you give them to start, like, as first steps that they could take into building sustainable wealth for themselves?
There's so many different routes for different people. One, if you're like a self-learner, you can just go online. I mean, there's plenty of free content, again, that you can learn off of it. A big motto for me, and like for my clients, excuse me, is that I feel like no one else can want it more than you.
Right.
Right. And so if you're really serious about changing your wealth, it doesn't matter who the heck you're working with. You could work with Bill Gates, you could work with Warren Buffett. You have to be serious about actually taking action about your finances.
Right.
So for someone who's serious about it, just teach yourself. And if you don't want to teach yourself, you don't want to spend the time reading the books and, reviewing content, then get someone who is an expert in that field and then work with them.
Right.
Some easy strategies for someone in that situation, though, would be, make sure that you have a fully funded savings account. When you get your paycheck, make sure that you're paying yourself first. Make sure that first your savings account is taken care of. Then you go into eliminating debt and all of that, and then third, investing into the stock market. So that's kind of like the steps that I teach in my coaching program. But someone who's receiving a paycheck, I would just recommend that you allocate your cash according to those steps each time you're paid. But it's easy to learn. It just takes some time.
Right, definitely. I agree with you. Because you and I being self-educated people in the financial space for the most part, like, the information is out there, right? It's
Right.
just like you said, but it's just a sort of a matter of how much you want to get it, or sometimes in some cases what I've seen is just you don't have the time to go out and pursue it, or maybe you lack the discipline to build those habits as you're bringing on that new knowledge. And so it's cool to see that there's so many different resources out there. And
Yeah.
the coaching side is one of it, but like a lot of the stuff I teach, and I'm sure you teach, someone could go Google and find on their own,
Absolutely.
right? And teach themselves.
Absolutely.
It's more that accountability piece, the reason why you and
Yeah.
I do what we do, to keep people accountable as they build those habits.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, so you listed out sort of like the different steps that you want to take in order as far as financial health, right? Like emergency fund, get rid of your debt, all of that, and then start investing and trying to grow your money. Is real estate a piece of that for you at all?
REITs, getting involved in that,
Okay.
in terms of like actually investing in physical property and becoming a property owner and investing in that sense where you're like a landlord. That's
Right.
not my specialty. I know people do it, but how I approach my services is more about giving people the foundation. So feel
Got it.
free to start a business, feel free to invest in all the properties you want in the world, but let's just make sure that you have your foundation set, So
Hmm.
let's make sure you have that savings account. Let's make sure that you have something going in your investment accounts. Let's make sure that your debt is under control. And, once you kind of have established yourself there, feel free to do what you want with your extra cash, right, each month. But I just teach people the foundation. And when it gets kind of extra with the real estate, there's probably, there's better people to talk to than me for sure.
Got it. Got it. And that makes sense. And I'm the same way. I like refer out experts. I'm like, oh, you need to talk to this guy about it.
Right.
I have no idea. That's interesting. Okay, so you're more the foundational side.
Yeah.
Cool. That makes sense. And then I'm curious, like, for somebody who has financial goals, like say they want to go on a big vacation, buy a house, whatever it may be, but they're in a place where they're struggling to manage their money. What sort of tips would you say, like, as far as like goal setting and actually accomplishing those goals, especially when they're huge and overwhelming? Like, I want to be financially free. Like, how do you break that down? What would you say to someone?
this literally the same thing that we were just talking about a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
You have to have a foundation. And so I talk to a lot of people, I'll get on the phone with someone and they're barely making ends meet. And that's okay. People come to me from different financial situations. That's fine. But you can't barely be making ends meet and then trying to plan like purchasing a home. There's just a huge gap between that,
Right.
So you have to, like, if your priority right now, it's great to have goals like going on vacation. It's great to have goals like buying a house. Like all of these things are fine, but you also have to make sure that you are financially sound, and it's not wise to jump into like a big purchase like that, whether it be a vacation or buying a home.
Yeah.
Without you have like a savings account or whatever. So I like people to take it one step at a time. We can work our way there, right? But if you're looking for financial freedom, the very first thing you're going to need is a savings account, right? Access to cash when you need it. And let's move from there. And then as you start to develop your foundation, you will have more freedom to kind of branch out in other areas. And so that's how I approach it is let's not talk about the house right now. If you have, $2.50 in your savings account, let's focus on that first.
Right.
Yeah.
No, definitely. The foundation is key. I mean, like the saying goes, you can't build a skyscraper, the Eiffel Tower, on a 6-inch slab, right? Like you have to have some deep concrete and take your time with it. So I truly wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing, helping people really wrap their heads around what's the first step that I need to take before trying to jump into big goals like that.
Right.
And the other sad piece of it, and I'm sure you've seen it too, is like people thinking that those material items, like a brand new car, a really nice fancy car, is what those are the purchases they need to be making to like fit into their friend group or society, whatever. That's a whole nother can of worms, but the way it hits the wallet is not good. And
It's not. And so I just like people to keep it simple. If you're coming to me, it's because you want to build wealth. So let's focus on getting that set up for you. Let's not talk about like cars, and definitely cars are like a serious no-no. Like that's a really big don't get me started on cars. It's really upsetting. But like, let's just focus on getting you set.
Yeah. No, we can go there with cars because honestly, like I see new cars driving off the dealership and I just envision like $100 bills just flying out of the trunk. You know what I mean? I'm like, you are losing so much money. So sad.
Yeah.
But hey, that's
crazy. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that's the price of, a lack of financial education. Right? And it's not really our fault either. It's a big part. Schools don't teach it, parents.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Totally.
What were you going to say?
It blows my mind because just building wealth is so simple. It's really simple.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that people put towards, a car payment, it varies, but let's just say like $250, right? Like on the lower end, $250 on a car payment each month. If you were to just put that into your investment account, like, for 25, 30 years, like you're set, and so it's just like people, like it's just a matter of being more, strategic about where you're putting your cash.
Yeah. Patience and delayed gratification. That's a big thing. People want it instant. They want it now. But then they wonder why they wind up in situations, rougher situations down the road. So I think you're definitely onto something with that whole like sustainability mindset in terms of the way you build your wealth. In terms of goals and like larger goals, I'm curious, do you dream of like yourself being financially free, retiring early, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of already feel like I'm financially free. I work completely for myself now. Financially Brave is my brand, and I sell services, and financial freedom looks different for everybody. Some people, like for them, it is just having a home and a couple, having a savings account, and then they're fine with that. And that's totally fine. Right. So for me, financial freedom and my financial goals are just kind of tailored towards being able to have the financial ability to support myself through my business, which I'm doing. And, I feel like I am retired. I mean, I'm working, but it doesn't feel like I'm working. I'm having fun, So I feel like I'm kind of there. And now it's more of a matter of like just scaling what I'm doing and seeing what happens.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. The age of 25, you're like, I think I am retired. That's so cool. That and I know what you mean too, because like I see the same for me. Like financial freedom just means like not worrying about having the bills being paid, but that doesn't,
Exactly.
it's like making work a choice instead of a necessity is the way I see it.
Exactly. Yeah,
But
totally.
if you find something you're passionate about, like we both did, then there's no reason that you can't keep doing it. And I mean, the reason why you and I are working so hard now is to build that in the future for ourselves, right? The ability, the choice to, like, I like the example, like I would spend a whole day for $5. If you gave me $5 or no money, I would go and talk to like 20 high school students about money, what they need to know, like seniors, right? And just help them out. And if my bills were already paid, I would be able to say yes to that engagement. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So
Right. That's
I
awesome.
think like financial freedom, retiring early gives you the ability
I'm
to
so sorry.
pursue your passions more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super cool. So I'm curious, like looking back at your career and sort of some of the stuff you've accomplished and sort of the path that you've taken, what is one of the most valuable lessons that you've learned? It could be from maybe a mistake that you've made, or something maybe like a mentor imparted on you, something that really like light bulb went off in your career that really changed, your perspective.
Career before doing my own business, or like either or?
Either or.
Either or. I think the biggest light bulb moment for me is was realizing more so like once I kind of started my brand, the how close the wealth building journey is, aligned with the entrepreneurship journey. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is just that like everything takes time. Anything worth having takes time. It takes time. You have to be willing to put in the work. And so, like you were saying earlier, like, people oftentimes are looking for quick solutions. It took them years and years to get into debt, but they want to find out how they can get out of it in a week. That does not exist unless you win the lotto. And so it's the same with entrepreneurship, though. You can't step into a space and feel entitled to millions and millions of dollars and, a large audience and all of that overnight. Like you have to be able to really kind of work your brand and experiment with what works and yada, yada, yada before you're able to really kind of get to that next step. And so for me, becoming an entrepreneur, at that time I was already kind of in a very financially sound place. That's why I created my brand in the first place. But I think embarking in the entrepreneurial space and just kind of becoming a business owner, and then reflecting on my wealth building journey, I'm like, wow, like this is so similar. I teach people in my course the value of patience. And as a business owner, you have to be patient. Like you have to be willing to just kind of put in the work to get results. And so that was the biggest light bulb moment for me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you say that because I hadn't really put two and two together there. But looking back at my wealth building journey and my entrepreneurial journey side by side, it's like, yep, they're pretty much same lessons, same values, applied and sort of like allowed for that progress. So
Yeah.
that is super interesting. And you kind of mentioned like seeing people make certain mistakes with their money or like not just not making the best choices with their money. Is there one thing above all? I mean, you can mention the car or maybe something different, but something that people do with their money that just drives you nuts, like super crazy.
Yeah, I think more than the car, because I understand that people just don't know. You know what I mean? We're not taught this. And so I completely understand why just a couple years ago I was down to purchase a car, so
Right.
I get it. But I think one thing that is really frustrating for me in this space is I talk to a lot of people, and oftentimes people have the tools and they have the resources to completely transform their life. But when it comes time to commit to making a budget, when it comes time to say no to Uber Eats, when it comes time to say no to vacations, when it comes time to stick to your budget, they don't do it. They don't want to do it. It's
Yeah.
inconvenient. And so that's very frustrating for me because, again, I can't help anyone who's not willing to help themselves. And so, more than a car payment, I can at least understand someone who maybe made like a bad decision and is trying to kind of figure out how to rectify that. But then there's people who know that they're making bad decisions and they continue to do it anyways because that's just what's comfortable for them. And there's not much you can do for someone who's in that space.
Right, right. It's sort of like leading a horse to water. Like it needs to be compelled to drink, or else the walk there wasn't really worth it, right? That's interesting. One thing that I talk a lot about in my content is like budgeting being like similar to dieting. You know, like people,
Mhm.
everyone knows that you'd be better off doing it just about, so most people try it, but very few people actually like stick with it and actually keep doing it. And I wonder, like, I have my thoughts on it, but I wonder why you think that is. Why do people fall off of it, specifically with budgeting?
Um, Convenience. I think people,
Yeah.
it's easier or it's more fun to, eat at McDonald's than it is to have like a salad, and it's convenient, it's more comfortable. So people gravitate towards that and they just don't have the skill set, or they haven't developed the skill set or the discipline to like step out of that space.
Right.
So I think, yeah, when it comes to budgeting, people are very unwilling to, especially in this day and age with social media and just everyone's kind of showing off what they're doing, and they're on trips and they're eating out with their friends or whatever. I think people feel compelled to kind of like show off their lifestyle in that way as well. And so
Right.
that also leads to people kind of like spending more than they should just because they want to look like they have it when they actually don't.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think just like people just don't want, like, people aren't okay with looking broke. I was totally fine with it. Like that was exactly what I did,
Yeah.
because I looked broke, but I was saving up.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, people are just, it's a convenience thing, and maybe not wanting it enough.
Yeah, that's fair. And to add on to that too, I would say that there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to what like budgeting actually is. You know, like people think like to budget it means like you can't eat out or like go to the mall anymore. Like whatever you like to do, they think like, okay, that means I can't do it. Same with a diet, right? Like what does it mean to have a diet? Oh, well, it means you can't eat these things, right? Like people
Right.
focus mentally on what it means you can't do, but
Yeah.
what I try to teach is like be empowered with what you can do. Like with
Yeah.
dieting, get creative with recipes that,
Yeah.
have the right ingredients. And with budgeting, have fun making sure that the way you spend your money aligns with your priorities, and have
Totally.
fun like working towards your goals because it's within your power, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
totally. And then along the lines of like investing in yourself, because that's a big part of both of our messaging, is like you really have to be able to want it, and take the time and find the resources to invest in yourself. What are some of the books that you would recommend somebody who's going in this direction, of personal finance, that you think would be helpful?
So, um, for me, I would say that when you're embarking on the wealth building journey, it's like it's like 95% discipline and like 5% knowledge. Investing, as you know, is like super easy, especially if you're not like, I'm not talking about active trading, I'm talking about passive investing.
Right.
That's super easy.
Index funds,
And
yeah.
so exactly. So when you're looking to build wealth, or if you're looking to just become an investor, you just have to make sure that you're spending right, so you're able to allocate what you need to into your accounts.
Yeah.
So it's more about mindset than it is about anything else. Like the education part is very, very simple. So with that being said, I would recommend that people kind of focus on books that, I mean, learning about investments is fine if you want to learn about it, like Intelligent Investor, Millionaire Next Door, Millionaire Teacher. Like those are all great books. But in terms of like actually getting your mind right, I would say like Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like all of the traditional, like all the classics are great. Grit, Mindset. Um, you Are a Badass is really great. Like just things that really pump you up and make you understand your worth as an individual, your potential. That's what's going to help you like push through to the other side, because you can know it all, but if you don't have the tools to execute it, doesn't matter. So mindset books all the way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you because like there are two pieces of it, the knowledge and the action, right?
Yeah,
And like you can read as much as you want and build as much knowledge, but it's nothing
right.
without actually
Exactly.
doing something. And so I try to read similar books that are like Tim Ferriss really pumps me up, and a few other people where it's just or like Gary Vee is crushing it. That makes you motivated to go out and actually do something, and that's
Totally.
the second piece of it. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of those authors talk about that too. They're like, hey, like once you put down this book, go do something, or else this book is, 200 pages sitting on your bookshelf, and that's it, right?
Yeah. And I think when people are looking for like educational like resources, I would just say that for me, I don't think there is one specific book that like changed my life. I think what it was just like continuously reading and like you said, kind of understanding like the common theme of what these authors are talking about. When you read a lot of books, like if you read 10 and 15 like motivational books in a given time frame, you'll notice that the message is actually very, very similar. Like
Right.
it's eerily similar, right? And so then you're like, okay, well, there's clearly some like they're onto something here. So I need to be taking on, this mindset as well. So I would just say like continue exposing yourself to experts, continue exposing yourself to entrepreneurs, and it'll change your mindset. But I wouldn't say there's like one specific book that like did it for me. It was just kind of like constantly being forced to like listen to the same message and I'm like, okay, got it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think in that moment comes at a different time for just about everyone. I
Right.
think you have to sort of hear the same thing over and over again to an extent until it really
Sure.
sticks, and
Exactly.
with those sorts of books, it's like you're really getting a glimpse into what the mindset is like of a
Yeah.
successful investor or somebody who's just successful overall with their money. Like
Right.
how do they think when they approach a problem? How do they think? And then that sort of you start to adapt it, as crazy as it
Right.
seems.
Right.
It's so cool. So well, thanks for sharing that, and thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
Yeah.
A
Thanks for
lot of the
having me.
stuff, yeah, no, of course, I had a lot of fun talking with you, and a lot of the stuff was super valuable. So I'm curious if anyone wants to get a hold of you, where's the best way to do that?
Definitely Instagram. My username is at financially brave. And you can email me too at alexis at financiallybrave.com if that, is easier for you.